Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have with us special guest Giacomo Sinisgalli. Giacomo is the founder and CEO of realestateauction.com and a licensed real estate broker. With more than 35 years of experience, he is nationally recognized for his leadership in real estate auctions and for training agents to use the auction model as a competitive advantage to increase leverage, certainty, and income per transaction. Giacomo is the author of Selling Real Estate at Auction and the creator of Certified Real Estate Auctioneer Training Program. He's equipped agents with practical systems to win more listings and create urgency-driven sales. He's also the host of Real Estate Auction Podcast. As a proud U.S. Army veteran, Giacomo is committed to helping real estate professionals build more predictable, profitable business through modern auction strategies. Thank you so much for joining us, Giacomo. I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I'm excited to be here. And that was like an incredible introduction. You're going to have to send that to me. I need that in writing. So the pressure is on. Hopefully I can deliver. But seriously, I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to be part of RedX. I love the community. I mean, there's over 8,000 members in the community. I love it. I love how RedX helps us stay consistent and help us grow. I'm always in the community every day. So I feel like I should be interviewing you, actually.
No. I'm not the expert here. I want to hear all about your thoughts. Speaking of which, I'd love to kind of dive in. When and why do auctions outperform traditional listings in today's uncertain market?
They don't always outperform traditional listings. You have to use an auction for certain circumstances. A lot of times agents will come to one of my auctions and they'll get excited and then they'll try to just set up an auction and think that the auction, slapping a sign on the auction or on the property, is going to automatically sell the property. And that is definitely not the case. So auctions should be used under certain circumstances, and we'll probably get into some of those during this podcast, and I'll explain more, dive deeper. I won't go into it too much right now, but auctions should be used for specific situations. They're not meant to replace traditional sales, and I don't think they ever will. In fact, when I'm on a listing presentation and I'm speaking with the seller, I'm trying to identify what problems the auction can solve. And if they really can't, I'm not going to suggest that we sell it at auction. I'll stick to a traditional model. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. What market conditions make the auction model especially powerful?
Well, auctions actually work in whether you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. And they work really well during a recession. Like in 2009, when the market collapsed, a lot of agents were getting out of the business. The market completely tanked, but my auction business was really thriving. And I don't want to say that and have the listeners think that auctions are just meant for distressed properties or when you're in a market collapse, because today auctions are used for everything from luxury properties, $1 million estates, to commercial properties, and they're non-distressed. So they can be used in a lot of different scenarios and under a lot of different circumstances, whether the market is hot or, it's not.
How does the auction model create more control compared to traditional listings?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I got into the auction business, for more control. And one way is the buyers have to do their inspections before they're allowed to submit an offer. And I recently did a traditional sale, and they submitted an offer after going back and forth. As you know, negotiating, you're going back and forth. And we finally came to an agreed upon price. And then we had the inspection. And then it was like we had to restart the negotiations all over again based on what they found on the inspections. So with an auction, it eliminates that. It gives the seller more control because that buyer has to do their inspection ahead of time, or they have to agree to waive it. So now when they submit an offer, if it's accepted or it's the high bid, you don't have to go back and forth and worry about renegotiating because of the inspection. So that's one way it gives you control. Another way is there's typically no financing contingencies. So you're selling a property, no mortgage contingency. The buyer is not going to be a tire kicker. They're going to be putting down a deposit that's non-refundable. And it gives the seller more control knowing that this buyer is pre-qualified. They're going to proceed to closing and they don't have to worry about financing. And then another way is there's time is of the essence. So let's just say a seller has a job that they have to transfer to, or they just built a new home and they have to move into this new home and start paying mortgage and upkeep and everything else for the new property, and they still haven't sold their old property. Auctions create a definite timeline, and the seller knows that on this date at this time, they're going to have a contract. They're going to have this property sold. So those are a few ways that give the seller and the agent more control. But I really love no inspection contingency. I really hate when buyers will negotiate, will agree on a price, and then we have to go and do an inspection. Now, rightfully so, they should be able to do the inspection, but with an auction, they have to do it ahead of time, or like I said, they waive it.
And I know you briefly touched on this before, of an agent just like slapping on a sign, but what's the difference between an agent that is just trying to pull off an auction and an agent that has a specialization in auctions? How does that change and position the agent as an authority, and how does that affect the transaction typically?
Well, if an agent tries to auction a property and it's not a true auction, they could hurt the seller. If the auction doesn't go through, it's going to leave a history online. The other buyers are going to come in after and say, oh, this property was maybe distressed. It didn't sell even at auction. So it can really hurt the seller. So you definitely don't want to go down that road. You want to make sure that if you're going to conduct an auction, it's a true scenario. It's a true seller situation where an auction is going to benefit. That way the seller or the agent is not going to set the seller up for failure. So it's really important that you don't think that auction is just a quick fix.
How does niche positioning reduce commission pressure?
Oh, that's a big one. And I do traditional sales, like I said, when it doesn't fit the auction model, but I am full-time auctioneer. So I'm always prospecting for the auction listing. And how it reduces commission pressure is when you're going after a listing, you're not the only agent that's speaking with the seller. They've probably spoken to 5 or 6 other agents. And if you don't have a unique selling proposition, if you don't have something that's that you're specializing in, like a niche, then the only thing you can fall back on is personality, maybe past experience, and commission. Okay, so you're going to end up negotiating your commission. Sellers are going to be trying to get you to lower your commission, saying, well, this agent said they can do it for this amount, or I'm not willing to pay that amount. Whereas as an expert, you're getting paid to solve a problem. You're the go-to expert in whatever problem or whatever niche you're trying to solve. It could be, and it's not just auctions, it could be a particular building in a particular part of town where you're the expert in that market. Or it could be a particular type of property, luxury properties, or maybe you're servicing seniors. So there's a lot of sub niches with auctions. So it's not just being an expert in auctions. It could be an expert in any other type of niche that serves the real estate market.
When it comes to, I know you mentioned prospecting, once you get that listing appointment, what does it typically look like for you during that listing appointment as opposed to a more traditional strategy and approach?
They're almost the same. You're going in and you're interviewing and you're trying to elicit all the problems that the seller's having. What are the reasons and motivations that they want to sell or why they need to sell? And then what I do is I try to find which benefit or which advantage would best serve the seller. And when I say best benefit or advantage, I mean which auction benefit or which auction advantage would best serve the seller. And if there's no benefit or advantage that would better serve the seller, then I don't pitch the auction. I never lead with auction. I go in just like I'm doing a traditional presentation, and I interview and I try to find out what the problem is, what specific issue is the seller having, or what's their motivation, or what are their goals. And I try to find out if the auction will meet that.
For agents that may be listening and are intrigued with this, especially with you not necessarily leading with auction and trying to figure out which model would work best for them, would you ever recommend agents having a specific niche and specializing in this only, or focusing mainly on auctions? Or do you always kind of recommend this strategy of figuring it out and knowing how to do both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't recommend that, especially a newer agent to auctions, try to focus specifically on auctions, because they're leaving too many deals on the table. Some sellers are just not going to agree to do an auction. And I think auctions are just another tool, just another marketing tool in an agent's bag of tools. And they should use it only as an additional strategy that could help a seller if the need is there. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that they go full time, but you do make more, and we'll talk about that when selling at auction. And so I do try to find the sellers that need an expert, need someone that specializes in it, because then I can charge more. It's a specialized niche. And it's not just about the money. I do help a lot of sellers. Auctions definitely help sellers that are in need, where a traditional sale might fail.
So this really does expand opportunity, and it doesn't necessarily narrow the field at all.
Oh, no, definitely expands the opportunity 100%. Mm-hmm.
Can you share an example of an agent who you've worked with or yourself who's transformed their positioning through auctions?
Either myself or an agent, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, it opens you up to being able to service clients that, like probate, that may need to sell on a specific time, or have a property that might not pass an inspection. A lot of times probate, the owners that passed away, they may have aged in place in the home. So there's probably deferred maintenance. There's probably a lot of, I don't want to say hoarding, but a lot of personal items that have been collected for years. Some of these seniors, especially the baby boomers who are now moving into nursing homes, have collected and been in the home for years. So there's so much clean out. With an auction, you really don't have to do a clean out. I just had a probate sale where the daughter's mom passed away, and the daughter was the administrator, and she lived very far away. And she grew up in this home. And when the mom passed away, the house was 3 floors full of personal items. And the daughter was really overwhelmed with having to get it cleaned out. She couldn't travel back and forth. And I pitched her both. I said, look, we can do a traditional, but I think the auction is going to be better suited because we're going to be able to sell it as is. There was deferred maintenance. So I said, you don't have to worry about fixing anything, because they didn't have the money to fix anything. Everything was tied up in the estate. I said, you don't have to worry about cleaning anything out, because it was going to cost $15,000 just to get it cleaned out. She didn't have that. So we were able to sell it as is. The buyer knew that they were required to clean out the property, all the personal items. She was able to leave everything behind. I told her just to go there, take whatever's personal to you, whatever, anything that means something to you that you want to keep, take that, take any furniture that you want, which she did. And we sold it, and it wouldn't have passed an inspection, number one. Number two, it may have not even passed an appraisal. So we were able to sell it without having to worry about an appraisal. And we ended up selling it for top dollar. We didn't just give it away because we had so many buyers interested. So when you have that many buyers, you create this competition. And now buyers are competing against each other instead of with the seller. So that's a scenario where it really helped. And she was very nervous. She didn't know what to do. She thought maybe she should just sell it to one of these wholesalers that was contacting her. So it turned out where I really was able to help her. We got top dollar for the house. She didn't have to clean it out. And she wrote me a great testimonial. I shared some of that in the community as well. And now she's a friend. And, she will definitely use me in the future. And it might be for an auction, or it might be for a traditional sale. I don't know.
I love that. I think that's super interesting. To dive a little bit deeper, what types of sellers are best suited for the auction model?
Well, they have to be auction minded. They have to kind of not be so nervous that they don't want to conduct an auction. They have to be motivated to want to sell their property. If they have a property that's overpriced, like a lot of times you'll see in today's market, properties are overpriced. Sellers are thinking 6 months ago what the prices were, and they're not in line with the market today. So if they're overpriced, they wouldn't be a good fit. If they're not auction minded, they might not be a good fit. And not that auctions will give away a property. We will try to get more than what you would get if you had just had a list price on it, but they have to have some equity in the property. They can't be underwater because then the auction wouldn't work well. And they definitely work well for any kind of distress like structural damage or where a property might need repairs that might not pass an inspection.
And how should agents approach probate or inherited properties differently as opposed to maybe like vacant or distressed owners properties?
Well, definitely with a lot of empathy, and they have to understand the probate process. You're either working with an administrator or an executor, and you could work with trustees as well. But with probate, if they don't have approval from the court, you really can't do anything. You have to be able to follow the lead until they get approval from the court, meaning they were issued letters, they call it letters of administration or letters of testamentary when they're the executor. So they should approach it knowing how that process works and not just go right in and try to auction or sell for probate. Again, you have to have a lot of empathy, and you should also have some options for a probate seller. Maybe they don't want to sell the property with all the belongings in there. So maybe you'll have some contacts with vendors that do cleanouts, and you can offer them those solutions so they don't have to really worry about it. You can say, listen, we work with a clean out company or a dumpster company that can come in and help clean it out, or moving companies. So you have to have all of that set up before you just start working with them. You have to understand the process and what they're going to be going through. And not all probate sellers are relatives. Sometimes it could be a friend that 20 years ago told their friend, yeah, I'll be your executor if you ever pass away. And then they move away, they move out of town, and all of a sudden, you know, their friend passes away, unfortunately, and now they're tasked with having to sell the property and come in and act as the estate administrator. And they're busy. They probably have families, and maybe they moved out of town. So being able to offer the support and understanding of what they're going through will really resonate with the seller. And if they understand that you understand, that's probably how you're going to get the listing. If you just go in and try to pitch it like a traditional agent or an agent that's just going to throw it on the MLS and not understand what they're going through, it's probably not a good idea. It's not going to work.
As you prospect, what systems have you found work best? So it sounds like you've done cold calling. Have you dived into the social media or postcards, any of those kind of features?
Yeah, so I love social media, but I use social media more for my school, to promote my school. I see a lot of excellent social media listing showings and tours, and they're working really well, but they don't work well for me. They have never worked well for me. I'm learning more about it. So what works well for me and consistent for me is cold calling. Number one, I can reach out to 50, 100 people in a day, a couple hundred people a week just on the phone. But I couple that with postcards, and I love postcards. And I couple that with funnels. So not only am I calling people, but what I'll do is if I'm on the phone with them, I won't try to close them on the phone. What I'll try to do is get them into my funnel by asking them, if I send you a link to information that could solve whatever problem they have, would you be willing to take a look at it? And if they say yes, then I'll limit my call. I'll minimize it to just getting them into my funnel. And once they're in there, they have to opt in to get whatever lead magnet that I'm trying to give them. And then once they opt in, Now my funnel can drip on them an email campaign. So I do that with a call, and I also do it with a postcard. So with a postcard, I have a URL, and I have so many postcards. I can show you all my postcards. So I have postcards for vacant, expired, probate, and they all have a URL on them or a QR code. So when I mail a postcard, the seller might not be so quick to want to call someone back, but they will take a look at because it's not threatening for them to say, oh, let me just take a look at this link or this QR code to see what they're offering. And once they do that, if you have a really good funnel, if you have a good message, a good hook, then they may opt in, and now you have a lead. So it allows you to not only cold call, but add some leverage to that cold call. So I use cold calling, postcards, and funnels for 100% for sure. In fact, everyone that I convert has probably gone through one of my funnels or received one of my postcards. And the other thing about postcards is they have a shelf life. So sometimes I mail a postcard and a person or a seller will call me 6, 7 months, maybe even a year later. And I'll ask them, how did you find me? Oh, I received one of your postcards. So then I got to go into my CRM, find them and say, okay, yeah, I mailed your postcard, but why'd you wait? And I wasn't ready, or we needed to do a clean out, or they just weren't ready. And then they call you. So that's why I love postcards. And the return on investment for postcards is like through the roof. I mean, one postcard, and I tell I shared some experiences in the community. One postcard I sent, I had some probate leads. I had like 27 probate leads, mailed 27 probate postcards, and I got one administrator contact me back, ended up selling 2 properties for her. And the return on that investment was exponential. And then a few months later, out of that same 27, another probate contacted me. They had just waited. So I ended up getting 3 leads, 3 sales out of 27 postcards.
That's not bad.
So, yeah, that's huge. So I'm a big believer in postcards, and I love selling them. Also, if you don't have a phone number and you really think that it might be a great lead and you don't want to door knock, drop a postcard. You definitely know you're going to get it in their hands. So
as you've been working your system and your processes and really refining them, what mistakes have you made in the past that you wouldn't want agents to make when targeting distressed or motivated sellers?
What mistakes when targeting motivated or distressed? First of all, not following up is a huge mistake, or not following up enough, because sometimes I'll contact a lead and I'll put it in my hot bin. I know it's a hot lead, but I just have to follow up, but I don't follow up enough. And then the time when I do follow up, oh, I already listed it. I listed it with someone else. And it was just because you didn't follow up enough. Because when they're ready, if you're the one that's on the phone with them, or if you're the one that's top of mind, you'll probably get the listing. Other times I've made mistakes thinking that it's not saleable. I can't, no one will buy it. And then someone else will come in, and then they'll end up selling it. So you don't want to talk yourself out of trying, I guess. If you think it might be overpriced, you still want to go after it. You still want to investigate it. So some of the mistakes are just talking myself out of going for the listing for one reason or another. And the biggest one is not following up enough.
I'd love to change gears for a little bit and talk about the processes and timelines for sellers and for auctions.
Okay.
So obviously when you're doing auctions, you have that compressed timeline as opposed to a more traditional model. How does that improve seller certainty?
Yeah. So whenever I take a listing, I have a 5-day onboarding and then a 30-day marketing period. And I know exactly what I'm going to be doing for marketing. And then what I also do is I make sure that I only do a few showings. So all the buyers that want to see it have to come during my schedule, not their schedule. If they want to see it, they have to come during the tours, the auction tour dates. And that helps improve certainty because I can gauge how much activity I'm getting when I'm showing the property, who's looking at it, and I can offer them what's called a pre-auction bid. So you don't have to actually wait for the auction date. You can offer what's called a pre-auction bid. And if I have interested parties, I can bring in an offer to the seller ahead of time. And if the seller accepts it, we can tell the buyer, okay, we're going to accept your offer, but we're canceling the auction. So that gives the seller more certainty that they don't actually have to wait till auction day. We can gauge how much interest, and we can actually sell it before auction date. And sometimes we get an offer that we can bring to auction, so we have a really good starting bid. And then the timeline of 30 days, the seller knows in 30 days, they're going to have a contract. They're going to have the property sold. And then from there, we offer like a 30 or 40-day closing period. So they know between 30 and 45 days, they're going to have it sold and closed so they can move on with whatever they have going on in their life.
And how can agents take this model and build a scalable auction business alongside traditional sales?
Well, they can do that by specializing in a sub-niche within auctions. So whatever they're doing now, if they're working luxury, there's a lot of luxury auction houses like Sotheby's, concierge auctions. Sotheby's just auctioned a ultra luxury estate called Ladune in the Hamptons, $88 million sale price, and I think it was a 12% buyer's premium. So if you're a luxury agent, you can offer auctions as another option for sellers. You don't have to just go in and say, I'm a luxury agent. You can offer it as, a second solution. You can do that with anything. So if you're a commercial agent, you can do commercial, and you can offer auctions as another solution. So you can couple it with anything that you're doing as a traditional agent. And there's a lot of sub niches. Like I said, you can do distressed, non-distressed, probate, commercial, residential, land, any type of property. You just have to know that even though any type of property can be sold at auction, not every property should be sold at auction. That's where the knowledge and the expertise and the skill comes in.
I love it. What operational systems are needed to run auctions effectively?
Operational systems, do you mean like technology or?
Let's dive into technology first. Yeah.
Okay. So with technology, the last live auction that I conducted was actually in 2015. I used to love being in front of the crowd, calling auctions, and just being in that environment. It's very exciting. But the last auction I called was 2015 because I transitioned to just online auctions. Now, if you had told me in 10 years ago that I would be conducting 100% of my auctions online, I never would have believed it. But now 100% of my auctions are done online. So the technology is like through the roof. Obviously, you can do tours online. You can have documents signed online. You can submit deposits online. And now you can bid online. And with online auctions, my reach is global. I can have a property local, but I'm reaching buyers around the world. The other thing with online auctions, I took a vacation to Maine, and I was actually walking on the beach conducting an auction from my phone while my feet were in the water and the waves were hitting my feet, and I sold the property. So online auctions are just amazing. And now with AI, it's just incredible. So technology has definitely changed. And I think because of that, you're starting to see more and more auctions being conducted online. I am anyway, because I'm in it every day. So I'm seeing that, transition. So online auctions are just incredible. I have developed our own online auction platform, and a lot of agents who are not full-time in auctions, they might not need a full-blown online auction platform. So there are third-party platforms that they can use, like Crexy for commercial auctions. They just sold one for $200 million using an online auction platform. So when you're seeing that kind of numbers, that's not a distressed asset. And if you can do that online, really, the sky's the limit. There is no limit. And that's where we're headed. And I think the more and more agents find out about auctions and learn about it, then that myth of auctions only being for distressed properties is going to go away. And then we'll start transitioning more towards it. But because of that myth, I have been able to fly under the radar with very little competition for many years. And I've enjoyed that. But now that I have my own online auction platform and I have my school, I promote it more. And I'm trying to let agents know that, they should definitely look into auctions to add to what they're already offering. Just because what we talked about as being an expert and being able to offer a unique selling proposition will give them an edge over agents that are just generalists, right?
Yeah.
That don't really have anything to offer other than what all the other agents are offering. And I'm not knocking it. I was a traditional agent for a very long time. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm knocking being a traditional agent. I'm just saying that there's something out there that you can use that can actually help sellers better than a traditional sale can. And as a professional, you should understand it. In fact, if you look at your license in most states, some states require you to get a specific auction license, but most states don't. But if you look at your license law, it says right in there, you're licensed as a salesperson or a broker to sell real estate or auction. It's right in there, but a lot of agents don't know that. So it's just an extra or another way for you to be able to service your clients.
So for agents that are hearing this and are interested, what would you recommend their first step towards building this as a second lane in their business be?
Well, definitely learn more about it. I've written some books, you can see about it. I have students and agents actually in the United States, all around the world that have contacted me to ask me questions. And I really love doing that. I'm very passionate about it, as you can probably tell. So they can always reach out to me. I don't want to promote what I'm doing, but I do have, a lot of resources out there for agents, from free to, I have audiobooks and my books and my training program. I actually created the CREA, Certified Real Estate Auctioneer designation. So they should start by getting educated. They shouldn't just dive right in and get excited, because you don't want to fail either. You don't want to jump into this and fail and think, oh, I tried to do an auction, it doesn't work. You want to make sure you go in knowing what you're doing. The other thing is you're representing a client. You have to make sure that you're actually providing the right guidance and advice. You don't want to just try to auction a property to get your feet wet and then have it hurt the seller. So start with education. And then once you do that, whether you use my company, there's other auction schools out there. With our company, we created a network. So once you go through my training, we actually help you with your first few auctions. We don't charge anything for it, but we guide you. We talk to you about how to analyze the seller's situation and whether it would be a good fit. And we'll talk you out of doing an auction before we'll talk you into it. We had one student, as soon as he graduated, he got a lead for a hydroelectric plant. I've never sold a hydroelectric plant. So I was like, I don't think you should do that for your first auction. And he said, I'm doing it anyway. He did it and he sold it. So that was pretty amazing. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So auctions work for these unique types of properties where, a traditional sale might not. So that was really impressive. And I've sold a lot of unique properties throughout my career. And, it's just exciting. And you can start with anything that you specialize in, but you have to get educated on how an auction works.
As the market shifts, we've already kind of seen it shift a lot. Will auctions become more mainstream?
I don't know if they'll become more mainstream the more agents that use them, but the more distress that hits the market, you'll see more auctions. Like I'm starting to see foreclosures start to tick up again. You're starting to see sales in Florida slow down. So when you say mainstream, I think they'll tick up like they did in 2009. Now, today, sellers have a lot of equity. So I think it'll be a little different. but auctions will still work. I think they'll work better now because of the amount of equity that sellers have. So I don't know how mainstream they'll become, but I'm hoping that more and more agents start using them to help sellers, because when the market does shift, when we do hit a recession, sellers need an alternative way to sell. They need a solution when they have these problems, whether it's a divorce or a bankruptcy or a foreclosure. Pre-foreclosure auctions work really well for pre-foreclosures. Vacants, auctions are a viable solution. So will they become mainstream? I don't think they'll ever replace traditional. I don't see that happening for a while, but who knows? But I do see them having, a bigger role, especially today. I've seen it, since I started. It's becoming more mainstream.
And if you had to give one final piece of advice to agents who want predictable income and stronger positioning, what would it be?
Okay, and this has nothing to do with auctions, right? You should, first of all, be the listing agent. That's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give. Always be the listing agent. Second is you should specialize in a niche, whether it's a certain market area, a certain type of property. That way, you know who your target is, right? And when you do target that person or that seller, you're the go-to expert for that niche, whatever it is. So that, number one, you're the listing agent. That gives you leverage. Number two, you're targeting a specific niche market and you're the go-to expert in that niche. So you're already outpacing your competition, the traditional agent that has no specialty, that is just chasing anything. So I would say that you need to do those two things: be the listing agent and specialize. And then the third thing, and you can maybe lump all these together, is you should invest in a lead source, right? Red X, I mean, there's other lead sources out there, but I've used them all. Red X is the best. And I'm not just saying that. It's just like your partner. You have like a whole team that is just bringing you leads where all you have to do is sit down and fire up the dialer and start calling. I mean, that alone will help you succeed, but you have to be consistent at it. Otherwise, you're going to be up and down. So be the listing agent, specialize in a niche, whether it's auctions or seniors or veterans. You want to narrow who your target audience is. That way, when you are making videos on social media, it's a targeted, you're the go-to expert, and then prospect consistently. And I know we all get busy. I get busy. You get busy. Everyone gets busy. So we don't always get to prospect as much as we want. But if we can really make a commitment and create a habit of doing that, even for an hour a day, then you're going to see your business transform. You'll definitely change your business. I have this, and it has nothing to do with Red X, but I have this calendar, and I call it the Red X calendar. And I used to send a Red X or a red Sharpie to all my agents with the calendar. I didn't email it. I made sure I put it in a manila envelope because I wanted it to be, I wanted them to actually go through this exercise. So they take out a 3-month calendar, and it's coming up in March, April, May. So you have 90 days, 91 actually, from March to May. They all get a calendar. They get a March, April, May calendar, and they get a red Sharpie, and they have to draw a red X every day that they prospect. And the challenge is you don't want to have a break in that red X chain. And one agent did it, $65,000. Now, he was stuck before he did this. At the end of the challenge, $65,000 in commissions he made. So now he's holding up the calendar and the red pen, and we give him an award. I mean, he knocks it out of the park. How did he do it? He was just consistent. It's just math. It's just a numbers game. And agents who think that they're stuck, all they have to do is look back on their performance the past 12 months. Why were they stuck? What weren't they doing? And they just need to make a few tweaks and get consistent and not talk themselves into thinking this doesn't work, because it's just a numbers game. You don't really have to be an expert. You have to have a good script and get on the phone. The more people you talk to, you're going to start converting leads. So that was a long answer for the one piece of advice that I could give. it's really, we just got to do it. We just have to stay consistent.
And then before we wrap up and close out, is there anything that I haven't asked that you think our listeners should know, whether it's about auctions or about prospecting in general?
No, you asked a lot of great questions. In fact, I was like, am I going to be able to handle all these questions? You asked a lot of great questions. I had a lot of fun. I mean, there's so much that I can share and talk about. I would love to come back. I think the things that we talked about, the postcards, funnels, I think everyone should learn how to create their own. It's just a landing page, and it allows you to put your face on there, your information, and maybe a message. Because a lot of times you're on the phone with a seller and they don't want to hear a long pitch, right? But if you could just send them your funnel, now while you're out with your wife and children, or your husband and your children, you have a funnel that's working for you 24 hours a day. So leverage technology. So maybe next time, if I'm ever invited back, we can talk about how I use postcards and funnels and convert sellers while I'm sleeping or I'm on vacation. So that's exciting too. I love technology.
I love it. And I know you mentioned that you're on the RedX prospecting community on Facebook, but if agents want to reach out and talk to you, where would be the best place to do that?
Am I allowed to give you a link or a URL? All right. So I have so much out there that I condensed everything to a link tree, and it's realestateauctiontraining.com. And that's everything that I offer, all my free stuff, my books. I'm on Audible. I have free webinars. So everything you would need to learn about auctions, whether you ever want to go to my school or go to another school, this will really, let you know what is available and what you can actually accomplish with auctions.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on with us, Giacomo. We loved having you. And thank you to everybody listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.